Historic second term for Trump. President Trump's घर वापसी. Trump ends Kamala's dream. Voters show Kamala the exit. America decides on Donald Trump. Top focus on 5 Live.
It's another slap in the face of opinion pollsters, exit pollsters, pundits, analysts, journalists, the media and ecosystem all across America that had predicted anything between a Kamala victory and a neck-and-neck dead heat between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. And look what happened, viewer. Once again, everyone proven wrong. This has become the new normal, it appears, when it comes to election projections. I'm Shiv. Thanks for tuning in. I'm going to have my say on the big lessons from the Trump victory today. Viewer, the victory of Donald Trump isn't just an American message. It isn't just a message in the West. It's a message for self-described Democrats, liberals and progressives around the world, and including very much here in India. A class of people who've spent the last decade painting their political opponents unrelentingly as fascists or Nazis, hoping that this projection of people like Trump as dictatorial overlords will be enough to sway a huge and complex multi-tiered election. And I will explain this to you. Lesson number 1, get out of your echo chambers. This is addressed to the liberal ecosystems of which Kamala Harris is a part. Get out of your echo chambers. You cannot build a campaign that obsesses with calling your rivals biased while refusing to look at your own and fix your own contradictions. The scale of Kamala Harris's defeat proves that her high-profile campaign was so convinced that voters would buy the Trump is bad narrative that they entirely failed to look within. A good campaign would have done both. Voters are not stupid, proven once again. Lesson number 2 for the liberal ecosystem. Don't be blinded by the lights and celebrity power. If celebrity endorsements in the United States were a compelling factor, Kamala Harris would have destroyed Donald Trump. She had a chorus line of America's biggest stars across media rooting for her to their hundreds of millions of followers. The verdict of voters has a resounding reply to this ludicrous American dependence on celebrity and star power. Lesson number 3, fear peddling. Fear peddling about your opponents only goes so far. Attempting too hard to scare the electorate about your rivals is an exercise in diminishing returns. Liberal ecosystems, including Kamala's, overwhelmingly poured money into media campaigns attempting to scare Americans about what life would look like under another Trump presidency, whereas he merely asked, has your life changed in the last 4 years, echoing what Ronald Reagan had once famously said. The verdict this time suggests that the electorate has not only rejected Kamala's projection of fear-mongering, but done so with utter contempt. Just look at the numbers. Lesson number 4, do not underestimate the power of sympathy. Liberals scoffed at Trump when he narrowly dodged a bullet to his head a few months ago. The Kamala campaign, unsure initially of how to react, first said the right things, but then ended up dipping its feet in a campaign of ridicule of Trump's campaign. Sympathy has to be handled with great care. It has the potential to exponentially change the game and push into the background more troubling aspects of Donald Trump's track record and character, which is what happened. When you mess with something like sympathy, you are playing with fire. It is something that is fraught with danger and can turn the tables like it perhaps had a role in doing this time around. Lesson number 5, messaging and emotional appeal can outweigh policy specifics. Trump's success highlights that clear, emotionally charged messaging often resonates more with voters than detailed policy proposals that may spend overwhelming resources focused on singular issues like Kamala's campaign did on issues like, for instance, abortion. No voter on earth is a one-issue voter. The Democrats plainly forgot that in this election. They allowed their imagination to simply die. They felt that issues that have been flogged endlessly for years and years and years, issues that have become hot-button issues between the Democrats and Republicans, would be enough to swing the electorate. That did not happen. It spectacularly failed. Lesson number 6, many Americans still feel economically insecure and worried about many cultural changes happening in the United States. Trump's framing of these issues as threats resonated with many voters as economic distress continues to be issue number 1. He underscored that Democrats failed to offer solutions to economic insecurity while navigating cultural issues carefully. Obviously, this is referring to immigration. Lesson number 7, Trump's outsider and anti-establishment appeal continues to resonate despite having a full presidential term behind him. He's still the irreverent rabble-rouser, very unpresidential. Many voters see him still as a voice against the system despite having been part of the system. Kamala Harris and her ecosystem, for all their embracing of emotional issues, seemed mostly like the out-of-touch elite. How ironic. Think about that for a moment. A daughter of immigrants who rose through merit and hard work to become Vice President of the United States of America was defeated by a foul-mouthed dynast tycoon because he successfully persuaded the electorate that the things Kamala said about him were actually more true of Kamala. Lesson number 8, the Kamala campaign was so obsessed with visible traction and analytics and social media that it almost completely forgot to offer a coherent economic vision to a country that's very much in employment distress. A sharp Trump saw this and crafted a campaign that some thought was actually foolhardy, spending inordinate resources on the issue of jobs even when he had just been president a few years ago. The COVID pandemic made all the difference. It's about the economy finally. And finally, lesson number 9. Trump successfully tapped into voters' fears and frustrations on issues like immigration, crime, and national identity. These are bread and butter issues for Donald Trump. Democrats will perhaps need to find compelling ways to address these issues without alienating their base or ceding ground on progressive values. 9 lessons that resonate and radiate out from Florida, from Washington, D.C., from all of those swing states, not just to voters and ecosystems within the United States, but left liberal ecosystems all across the world, and I most definitely include the one here in India. Do not underestimate your rivals, do not make assumptions, and most definitely don't take your voter for granted.
It's a political victory that our country has never seen before, nothing like this. I want to thank the American people for the extraordinary honor of being elected your 47th president and your 45th president.
Donald Trump roaring back to White House for a historic second term. And after the comprehensive win, it was a joint show of solidarity for Team Trump. The president-elected was flanked by his wife Melania, daughter Ivanka, and son Barron Trump.
I want to also thank my beautiful wife Melania, First Lady. Who has the #1 best-selling book in the country. Can you believe that?
He cheated death by surviving an assassination attempt. held up his fist in a show of courage and defiance. Was indicted and even convicted of felony charges.
Thank you very much. I just want to say before we begin, these are all Biden trials.
But on Wednesday, Trump won big, painting US political map red, including key battleground states.
Well, I want to thank you all very much. This is great. These are our friends. We have thousands of friends on this incredible movement. This was a movement like nobody's ever seen before. And frankly, this was, I believe, the greatest political movement of all time. There's never been anything like this in this country and maybe beyond.
Speaking at an address to supporters in Florida, Trump affirmed that his win will help the country heal.
And the Senate races. This will truly be the golden age of America. That's what we have to have. This is a magnificent victory for the American people that will allow us to make America great again.
Trump recalled his assassination bid in Pennsylvania, a key swing state that he has backed decisively.
I mean, many people have told me that God spared my life for a reason. And that reason was to save our country and to restore America to greatness. And now we are going to fulfill that mission together. Take a look at what happened.
Trump survived an assassination attempt in July this year when he was shot at during a rally. Trump's mega comeback is only the second instance of a president winning a mandate after a loss. With Geeta Mohan in Florida and Rohit Sharma in Washington, D.C., Bureau Report, India Today.
And I'm going to tell our viewers in just a moment what the big implications are as far as India is concerned, that big bromance between Prime Minister Modi and Donald Trump that is likely to set the stage for a big rise in relations between the two countries. But before that, I want to bring in our foreign affairs correspondent Shashank Mattu for a quick word on that. Shashank, we've seen Prime Minister Modi's tweet, welcoming the victory of Donald Trump. Modi himself has received a lot of political heat for that 2019 rally in Houston where he talked about, ab ki baar Trump sarkar, right before Trump's loss. But it looks like 4 years later, that rallying cry has come true. What are you hearing from within the Indian government about Trump 2.0?
Well, Shiv, you're absolutely right. I think that that line, that Ab Ki Baar Trump's car in 2019, I know for a fact that the Indian government had to do a strong ground game with the Democratic Party after that because it was seen as Prime Minister Modi aligning somehow with the Republican Party. But yes, absolutely. Prime Minister Modi has invested in this relationship extremely closely. And with Donald Trump, really the only thing you can count on when it comes to him is that personal relationship. Modi was really one of the two world leaders, apart from Japan, Shinzo Abe, who really learned how to handle Donald Trump well. So that is definitely something that's going to suit him well over the next 4 years with Donald Trump. As far as the Indian government is concerned, I think the concerns of the Indian government are the same as everyone else. They're going to want to have a serious degree of continuity in terms of policy on China. They want to maintain some strategic cooperation with the United States on that. Donald Trump was very strong on defense and making sure that defense technologies were available to India in a proper fashion. That is something that Indian officials will be keen to continue, both the cooperation on China, both strategically in the Indo-Pacific, as well as on defense technology. But there is, of course, some degree of disquiet, some degree of concern as to how trade will be handled, because Donald Trump, remember, has talked about a 20% across-the-board tariff on imports coming in from all over the world, including Indian imports. He's called India a tariff king, an abuser of the international trade system. That's something that our officials in the Commerce Department are going to have to watch extremely closely. That is going to be something that's going to be important, as well as how he deals with more broader Indo-Pacific alliance partners like Japan and South Korea, countries that have not dealt with Trump very well in the past, but at the same time, are the countries that India is friendly with, and India is going to want to make sure that that message on China remains strong. They're also going to see Trump's messaging on Russia and what happens with the Ukraine war. We're very clear that he wants a negotiated settlement of the conflict. He's not clearly said that he wants Ukraine to win the war. So India is going to be clear that that isn't something that India wants to see, which is less pressure on India for its relationship with Russia, more engagement with Russia, bringing Russia to the table on Ukraine and seeing a negotiated end to the Ukraine conflict.
And I'm glad you mentioned the trade tariffs issue, Shashank, because on our coverage here, we're perhaps the only ones highlighting both the warning signs and the good news. You know, what Shashank has highlighted is that Trump has engaged in a pretty bitter dispute. He's had harsh words to say about India in the past when it comes to the issue of trade and tariffs. But the relationship between Modi and Trump is something that both sides will look upon to try and in many ways clear the decks for a much higher relationship. Shashank, appreciate you joining me for the moment. Keep tracking that story. We'll be waiting to hear more from within the Indian system. But Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar was something that Prime Minister Modi had said in Houston at the Howdy Modi rally in 2019. It immediately became controversial because, as you know, just a few months later, Joe Biden of the Democratic Party became the President of the United States. And as you just heard Shashank say, the Indian government had to manage its relationship and repair the damage somewhat with the Democrats. Well, 4 years later, it is Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar. Here's a look at the very unique Modi-Trump relationship. There's been a lot of speculation about what this relationship can make possible between the two countries. Well, here's a look.
God bless India. God bless the United States of America. We love you. We love you, India, very much. Thank you. Thank you.
Ab ki baar Trump Sarkar.
Modi's risky clarion call 5 years ago has come true, and the decks have been cleared for Modi-Trump 2.0. Two leaders who share a rare visible friendship, one becoming only the second Indian Prime Minister to win a third term, and the other only the second US President to win a second non-consecutive term. The decks stand cleared for a major boost in India-US relations. A history of bonhomie aside, Trump's tweet a week before his victory sets the tone, where he declared that Trump 2.0 would strengthen its friendship with, I quote, my good friend Prime Minister Narendra Modi. Here's how Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar is advantage India. For starters, Trump's strong rhetoric against China aligns with India's concerns. The incoming Trump administration could pressure China economically and diplomatically, boosting India amidst an ongoing de-escalation in the Himalayas. Trump 2.0 means increased scrutiny of Pakistan's actions on terror, limiting its influence in regional disputes, and providing India with much more strategic space in the context of Kashmir. Trump as president could reverse the frictions over India-designated Khalistani terrorists in the US and Canada. Trump's strong stance against extremist groups means he could repair the damage done under the Biden administration, particularly with figures like Gurpatwant Singh Pannu and Canadian Prime Minister Trudeau's support of such groups. Defense and military ties between the two countries are expected to soar under the new Trump administration. The recent mega drone deal was pushed hardest under the first Trump Sarkar. Expect much more under the second. The rapport and friendship between the two leaders could also fuel the next stage of India-US trade, economic and cultural ties across the board. Ab Ki Baar Trump Sarkar, indeed. Bureau Report, India Today. So we've told you about the Modi-Trump relationship, the body language, it's all there, the optics are good, it's all buzzing. And we've told you about what it could actually lead to in terms of the bilateral relationship. But what about the neighborhood? India continues to have a troubled neighborhood. What kind of an impact, if any, could a new Trump Sarkar have on India's neighborhood flashpoints? Let's first, of course, take Pakistan. Trump has always had a tough stance as far as Pakistan is concerned. So Trump becoming president is definitely advantage India. Remember in 2019, when Trump was president, Trump was clear as far as India and its attacks on Balakot in Pakistan was concerned. It was clear that the messaging coming out from that Trump's administration was that India was defending itself and attacking terror. So anti-terror voices will get strengthened thanks to Trump in his new avatar. Then you've got the China border, the border dispute between India and China, which has lately seen, small steps towards a larger resolution, hopefully. Trump has been tough on China, whether it is diplomatically, whether it is strategically, whether it is through trade, and whether it is through diplomacy. The fact is, as India and China try and create a more normalized relationship, Trump on India's side will definitely be advantage India. And finally, to a far smaller extent compared to Pakistan and China, is Bangladesh. Bangladesh, a country seen to have had a military coup, installing Mohammad Yunus as their new leader, presumably through the backing of the United States and the deep state. Well, Trump tweeted just 6 days ago about the fact that minorities are being persecuted in Bangladesh, making it very clear where he stands as far as the Yunus government in Bangladesh is concerned. So on all three aspects, whether Pakistan, Bangladesh or China, as far as India is concerned, a Trump Sarkar is advantage India. Gaurav Sawant is with me live to dissect this just a little bit more. Gaurav, there have been frictions, there have been hurdles as far as India and the United States are concerned, even under a Trump administration. But on these broader aspects of national security issues, most importantly, Pakistan and China, and to a smaller extent, Bangladesh, am I right in saying it's almost completely advantage India?
It indeed appears to be, given the track record of both the partnerships between India and the United States of America between 2016 and 20. And it's borne out by facts on ground. Remember 2017, when the Chinese were advancing menacingly on the North Sikkim front and around Dolam Plateau. That was the time that, again, America and India shared a lot of intelligence, and those intelligence inputs helped India prepare better. There's a lot of satellite intelligence shared between America and India all along the line of actual control. While India-America defense relationship and strategic relationship have always remained very strong post-1999, whether it's the Democrats or the Republicans in power. But when it comes to radical Islamist terror, especially from Pakistan, the Republicans have been harder on Pakistan, and Democrats to a very large extent have been softer, as we've seen. And perhaps it's also because of the kind of support that Pakistani Americans have given to the Democrats, especially Joe Biden. So that's where Donald Trump has been extremely hard on Pakistan state-sponsored radical Islamist terror, when he called out Pakistan as taking billions of dollars from America and being involved in the killing of Americans in Afghanistan or spreading terror. So that's where perhaps if that same policy continues, that's where we see Pakistan in the doghouse. Repair of military hardware in Pakistan, giving new hardware to Pakistan, that may be more difficult, especially at a time when India's strategic might is increasing, and that is where Pakistan is feeling the pinch, even in an organization like the BRICS, where Pakistan was hoping to make entry and could not do so in Kazan. As far as Bangladesh is concerned, you're absolutely right. Given that big picture that went absolutely viral of Joe Biden hugging Nobel laureate Professor Mohammad Yunus and radical Islamists running the streets of Bangladesh, it's a big threat to India's security. It's a big threat to Hindus in Bangladesh. They're being persecuted day in and day out. And Donald Trump has called that out. Whether that was election speeches, but will it be followed up with action on ground? Remains to be seen, but Republicans assure us, whoever I've been speaking to, that Donald Trump, even in personal conversations, said, wherever Hindus are persecuted, I am standing with them. Yeah. That's what he's told them. Point 2. Point 3, even on an issue like Niger, Pannu and Canada, India has been pressing home that point. Given the personal chemistry or the lack of it between Trudeau and Trump, we know how that is likely to pan out. So overall, likely to be a win-win for India on virtually every front. There are challenges that will remain, but India is a big country, strong country. He's described Prime Minister Narendra Modi as a tough negotiator. So those negotiations will continue.
Gaurav, I just wanted to dig in just briefly on that last point you made on, Khalistani terror. Under the Biden administration, which had weaponized the Gurpatwan Singh Pannu issue, it had become a diplomatic spat somewhat between India and the United States, even though the core of the strategic relationship has, of course, been, very nicely insulated from the frictions. There is also the Trudeau aspect, like you just pointed out. Could you tell us a little bit more about how a Trump in the White House could qualitatively change that?
One of India's apprehensions, and not officially shared but discussed, was that Democrats would with their, in some way, if I may, and especially towards the end of Joe Biden's tenure, where perhaps the state was calling the shots and not as much the president, as some argue, was interfering or seen to be interfering in India's internal affairs, and even earlier. Remember the Citizenship Amendment Act? CA is not anti-Muslim, but that entire rhetoric that was spread that CA is anti-Muslim, people like several Democrat leaders, including Kamala Harris, they had adopted a certain line, whether it was CA or Article 370. Again, India's internal affairs, no business for anyone to interfere in India's internal affairs, but they sought to poke their nose in it, which India said is completely not done. But the Americans, tried to do that. Again with Pannu, he's a terrorist. He's a declared terrorist. When you're a strategic partner, you go after those terrorists instead of encouraging them, saying they are our citizens. The burning down of the Indian consulate in San Francisco, you don't let that happen to a friendly country, and yet America permitted that to happen, and Canada was even worse. So with Trump in White House, things are likely to ease up on that front. That's what is the expectation, Shiv.
We look forward to that, because India and Canada have otherwise very strong relations that have been completely ruined by one man who continues to be the Canadian Prime Minister. We'll have to see how a Trump Sarkar actually impacts that. Gaurav, thanks very much for that. The big international question being asked with Trump back as president is, how will his presidency impact a world at war? Since the last time that he was president, there's been an entire pandemic, and two big wars have erupted in the world. One in Russia versus Ukraine, and another in Israel versus Hamas, Hezbollah, and Iran. What kind of impact is that going to happen? I'm going to show you in a moment on a global map, but first listen to what Trump said about these wars in his victory speech just a short while ago.
Want a strong and powerful military, and ideally we don't have to use it. We had no wars, 4 years we had no wars, except we defeated ISIS. We defeated ISIS in record time, but we had no wars. They said, he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. But this is also a massive victory for democracy and for freedom. Together we're going to unlock America's glorious destiny. We're going to achieve the most incredible future for our people.
So let's look at all the big world leaders and the big conflict points and see where they stand and what they think and how they're going to react to Trump as president. This is what we're looking at as far as the world map is concerned. Let's put that up here and show you how President Trump becoming the commander-in-chief of the United States is making Vladimir Putin most definitely smile, because unlike the Biden administration, Trump has always had a friendly approach as far as Russia is concerned. He's always advocated healthy relations. But Ukraine's Zelensky is going to be a very anxious man, because Trump has almost officially promised to end all weapon supplies to Ukraine and end all military assistance. Where does that leave his war? Xi Jinping is going to be nervous, because Trump has always taken a tough stand, whether it is trade, diplomacy, strategic affairs, as far as China is concerned. So he's not going to be very happy that Biden has been replaced by Trump. Netanyahu of Israel is definitely going to be happy. He was quite upset with the prevarications and obfuscations under the Biden administration, and the prospect of Kamala Harris becoming president was a nightmare for Netanyahu. He welcomes Trump as president, but Al-Khamenei of Iran, this is an absolute nightmare, because Trump has vowed a very, very harsh stance. He could endorse a coalition of Gulf states against Iran as well, and therefore it's not good news. For India, like we just showed you, it's it's definitely good news. India has had good relations with the democratic system as well, including the Biden administration. But compared to a Trump Sarkar, there is no comparison really. Therefore, Modi is most definitely smiling. But the person who isn't smiling is Shehbaz Sharif, because Trump has taken an unequivocal hard stance against terrorism, and whether it is Balakot or assigning tags to terror groups in Pakistan, Trump has been very, very clear. And finally, Bangladesh, Mohammad Yunus is not going to be sleeping tonight, viewer, because it was the Biden administration which had almost fully endorsed the regime change in Bangladesh, the fleeing of Sheikh Hasina to India and the installation of Mohammad Yunus. And therefore, he's not going to be very happy with this change of guard, especially since Donald Trump just 6 days ago talked about the persecution of minorities in that country, making his stance very, very clear. Gaurav, the world has changed in the last few hours. Those who had been hoping for a Kamala Harris presidency, people perhaps like Xi Jinping, perhaps like Zelensky, perhaps like Al Khamenei, for them, a Trump presidency is especially a nightmare, which is not an exaggeration, because Trump has proven to be, in terms of foreign affairs, in terms of decision-making, quite impulsive, quite unpredictable, quite volatile. The world has changed since his last presidency, and therefore all of these leaders have reason to be nervous.
They do have reason to be nervous, especially at a time when Donald Trump, in the run-up to elections, throughout his campaign, and even in his victory speech, said that they say, I'm going to wage wars, I stop wars, I do not wage wars. So that's very clear. He believes in negotiations. He believes, in ensuring that it's an America first policy that he's able to ensure. He has great personal chemistry with Benjamin Netanyahu of Israel. And there were many apprehensions when I was reporting from Israel that in case Kamala Harris comes to White House, then Israel's offensive could get adversely impacted. How does Israel's offensive be taken forward now, whether it will be militarily or diplomatically from a position of strength with Donald Trump in the White House remains to be seen. But perhaps, they could move forward towards peace. As far as Ukraine is concerned, remember in the run-up to elections, he said even before my inauguration on the 20th of January 2025, the war between Russia and Ukraine will stop. And there's a big tweet, a message that's been put out by President Zelensky, who's congratulating Donald Trump. At the same time, he's hoping that he will, come true about peace through strength. He hopes to come to the United States and engage with Donald Trump. But will that unlimited supply of weapons or supply of weapons continue to Ukraine remains a question, especially what happens to NATO countries. Remember, Shiv, you and I have reported when Donald Trump was President of the United States of America, he wanted Europe to spend more money for its protection and contribute more to the North Atlantic Treaty Organization. And that is why France is already concerned that we'll have to look after our interests ourselves and chart out a different course. So all of that will have a major impact on the Russia-Ukraine conflict. Also, China would be very wary and would want to watch what tariffs come China's way. Bangladesh, as you very rightly pointed out, Joe Biden, many argued this was his project or the deep state project. Will this continue, or will Trump, who spoke up for Bangladeshi Hindus, put an end to the persecution of Hindus at the hands of radical Islamists in Bangladesh? Those are several questions where all eyes will remain on Donald Trump from now till January 20th, 2025 and then ahead.
All eyes are going to be on that Trump presidency to see if he puts his money where his mouth is on immediate issues, which he's taken very strong stances on. One of the things about Trump is he takes such strong stands that it's difficult to back out of them, and therefore he will have to be held to account on many of those things. Gaurav, thanks very much for that. Now remember, in his victory speech, Donald Trump said, this is the most important job in the world. And in many ways, he's right. The President of the United States has exponentially more power than any other world leader and most other world leaders combined. And therefore, what are the people of the world really saying about another Trump presidency? Take a look.
He and Kamala Harris is the same as administration. Their enemy and hostility against the Palestinian people and against the Palestinian issue is fixed, will not change. And don't forget that he is the first one who confessed with Jerusalem as a capital for the Israeli, and he transferred the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. And don't we as Arab, as a Palestinian, will not be naive enough. We have to deal with them as an enemy. We have to determine who's the enemy. They are enemy.
والا عرض به خدمتتون که من دورادور دنبال میکنم و خیلی هم خوشحالم که آقای ترامپ رئیس جمهور آمریکا شد.
I think Trump is a nightmare. So it's very clear, but I think as time progressed, I also think Democrats are very out of touch. And so this is obviously, to me, a clear evidence that most of the populace also feels that the Democrats don't get it.
I think no one's ready for Trump again, let's be honest. It would have been nice having a woman in the office, but we don't get to decide, do we?
Now, we saw the stock market indices in different parts of the world, certainly here in India, soaring on the news of another Trump government, Trump 2.0. Let's take a look at Trump's impact on India, the potential impact on India in the economic sphere. Well, the one thing we can almost definitely count on are increased trade tariffs. This was one of the friction points between India and the previous Trump Sarkar. There will be a pressure to lower trade restrictions, another flashpoint between the two sides back when Trump was president. The export sector may face some instability. The China Plus One strategy could boost foreign investment into India. The semiconductor sector will see gains, which is a big plus as far as a new Trump government is concerned. A stronger dollar may raise bond yields, impact oil and gold prices. So there are many different layers of impact that could potentially be seen with this presidency of Donald Trump. I want to bring in Business Today's managing editor, Siddharth Zarabi, for more on this. Siddharth, break it down for us. Another Trump Sarkar in terms of economy, in terms of trade with India. Your big takeaways of what you think is going to happen.
Complex set of possibilities, but like you said, I just want to throw up one data point. Between 2014 and 2024, Shiv, India's total trade with our largest trading partner, the United States of America, has doubled almost from 60 billion to 120. So that's point number one. Therefore, trade ties are expected to continue to prosper. In the short term, there will be a bump really between what happens as far as import tariffs are concerned, and if a Trump presidency decides to impose 10 to 20% tariffs on certain goods that are imported from India, and reciprocal lower duties are demanded. But remember, there is a China angle in this. Donald Trump has spoken about 60% tariff on Chinese imports, and experts suggest that if that were to ever play out, India will be a beneficiary because a lot of companies will move away from China, a post-COVID development of China Plus One that's already underway, Shiv. So we'll have to wait for specific actions, but broadly I would say that beyond a bump in tariffs and possibly tighter immigration, including H-1B, remember Trump had tightened that, and there will likely be some consequences on that account.
All right, Siddharth Zarabi, thank you very much for bringing that into perspective for us. You can watch Business Today, read the Business Today website to know more about each of those points that Siddharth Zarabi raised. Also, joining us live now, we're very privileged to be joined by Taranjeet Singh Sandhu. He's former ambassador to the United States from India, and he joins us to give us his perspective on Trump winning this election and what it means for India and the region. Ambassador Sandhu, thank you for your time, sir. Thank you for being with me here on India Today. My first question to you, sir, as someone who has been ambassador to the United States until very, very recently, your initial assessment of this Trump victory and what it means for India.
I think, Shiv, the most important aspect to keep in mind is that the Indian leadership, and particularly in the last 10 years, we have had a very bipartisan relationship. This has steadily developed. And if you saw the first Trump administration, the Indo-Pacific focus was very much prominent there. I would classify it in two ways. One, long-term.
Yes.
The relationship will only deepen further. There'll be a number of collaborations, not only in the strategic side, but also in areas of healthcare, in energy, for example. And I recall in February 2020, when President Trump came here on the state visit, he was very pleasantly surprised about the rise of what can be called as energy trade between United States and India. And similarly, IT, digital startup, what we call is information technology revolution. We are very strong partners in that. Artificial intelligence. You have already seen investments coming in semiconductors and all such areas. And finally, education and knowledge partnership. Look, we have about 275,000 Indian students studying in the United States. 2/3 of them are in STEM areas. They bring value and competitive edge to the United States, just like the Indian Americans who had gone earlier and today are heading so many international corporations there. So this relationship will move up. However, on the short-term side, there'll be a number of issues in terms of trade, in terms of tariffs, and in terms of illegal immigration. That will come up, and I'm sure, there'll be a number of deals that will be struck. President Trump is famous for saying that he's a deal maker. And you know the equation between him and Prime Minister.
Very true. Ambassador Sandhu, my second question to you is, continuity is the name of the game as far as the India-US relationship is concerned. Frictions aside, whether it is trade, whether it is, smaller diplomatic confrontations, the core of the relationship has always enjoyed, continuity across administrations, which you have also seen personally. Do you, in that context, do you see any major changes or major shifts in the relationship under this second Trump administration, sir?
Look, I think your pictures are already showing what kind of good and warm chemistry there is between the leaderships, which has been between United States and India. And that's why I keep mentioning that our Indian American community there is bipartisan also, just like our relationship has been. And this relationship, and even under Prime Minister Modi, there was a strong connection with President Obama. There was a strong connection with President Biden. There was a strong connection with President Trump earlier. And I'm sure this connection will continue. So this relationship will deepen and go much more into many of the areas. As I mentioned, whole lot of them, we can expect both the countries to be working together in partnership. This is a relationship which has got converted into partnership, and that had started when President Trump was the president.
I do want your view, Ambassador Sandhu, of, one of the more unsavory sort of headlines between India and the United States in recent times, which has been the issue of, India designated Khalistani terrorists operating in the US and Canada. I know that diplomatic relations are far more complex than simple issues, and these things are never easy to simplify. But the public in India, which has been watching this kind of confrontation between India and the US over someone like a Gurpatwant Singh Pannu, would there be a qualitative shift or a change in how a Trump administration deals with this issue vis-a-vis the previous administration, sir?
Look, on this, I think the External Affairs Minister, the spokesperson, the High Commissioner and the Ambassador have been speaking, so I don't want to go ahead of them and say something on it. But I would only point to the fact that as far as United States and India is concerned, there has been a lot of interaction on this. There has also been special committee which is looking into it. And there has been more than satisfaction expressed between the both sides. On the Canada side, again, I will only draw you to the statements which have been made by the spokesperson.
Yeah.
However, this relationship is much, much deeper. United States-India partnership continues to exist. I think the exchanges between the external affairs ministers, between our leaders, both President Biden and Prime Minister Modi, on a number of issues. And also, very recently, there was an interaction between the two NSAs. I think that is reflective of the kind of depth that is in this relationship. And, you know, characters who are generally spoilers will not be able to spoil this relationship.
Last couple of questions, Ambassador Sandhu. The issue of China, you know, where India and China have lately made some, first steps towards some kind of a de-escalation in the Himalayas, in Ladakh, in the context of India being seen, widely as a kind of regional bulwark by the United States against Chinese influence in the region. What shifts now? Does anything dramatically change in your view?
I think as far as China was concerned, or is concerned, I think both the countries have an open-eyed approach. You know, it's not that India had invited China to come and sit on the border.
Yeah.
So therefore, I think during the COVID, United States also, there is a public opinion in the United States which has a certain view on China. So my understanding is that public opinion will play a role. But that doesn't mean that the relationship stop. Look, China is an important economic actor. It's also a political and actor in so many other ways. So therefore, I think the relationship between the United States and India, and even under Trump administration, if you look at one of the final documents which the first Trump administration had put out, that is the Indo-Pacific strategy. India is a very important player in that. So by pointing you towards that, I feel confident that United States-India partnership in the strategic area too will further deepen.
And we're looking forward to what that next phase in this relationship is really going to look like. Thank you very much for providing an interesting and authentic spotlight on it. Who better than a former ambassador to the United States to comment on what we've just seen happen in the United States. Ambassador Sandhu, a pleasure, sir. Thank you so much for joining me here on India Today.
Thank you, Shiv.
Thank you. Well, that's a wrap on 5 Live.